You're watching Cars.tv.
I'm Callum Ilott. I'm racing in IndyCar for Juncos Hollinger Racing, the number 77 car. We're in Long Beach, California. I've raced in F3, F2. I suppose F2 is like a semi-professional series, but in a way it's professional. Yeah, if I go there, back in F2 2019, I think it was in Bahrain. It's a tough weekend, you know, it's always a baptism of fire. Also, if I come to my first weekend in IndyCar last year, it was in Portland. Yeah, this is a tough series, especially very different from European racing. Didn't find it easy, but you know, it's a different experience. So I enjoyed it, had to tackle the challenge. I had no family involved in motorsport. It was more that I got invited to like a go-karting party back in the UK when I was 7. And I fell in love with the speed and the feeling of it. Like at 7 years old, maybe you play football, soccer, but nothing comes close to motorsport. So I asked my dad to go again and again and again. And at some point, someone said, well, it's just like inefficient to spend that without buying a go-kart and go from there. And I think one Christmas I had a go-kart there, and yeah, that got me into it and just went from there. So it was more the hobby, the love for the speed. I wasn't really into the competition at that time, and then I think when you get your first good result, that drags you into the competition side as well. It's tough, it's a different feeling in the car to anything you can replicate in the gym. So obviously we try and keep a general fitness as high as possible through the winter, but nothing really prepares you for that first test day where it kicks your ass and you have to just recover for a couple of days, and then you're kind of ready to go, but you have to maintain a good generic fitness, especially in IndyCar. It's so hot in these cars. And when we come to a race like this, where it's in the 90s, and a lot of drivers are feeling it after this race. I mean, if it's not lights to flag green, you're doing close to 2 hours of racing. That's why we spend so much time testing and perfecting these cars. For example, the Indy 500, you got a week's worth of testing before that, just to dial it in perfectly for each condition. I mean, the wind can change, or the temperature can change 5 degrees, and that just ruins your car. It's tough, and then as a driver you have to learn to always adapt, know your car inside out, from a controls point of view, from a balance point of view. I mean, I could go on and on and on about that, but a lot of these things become natural, especially with experience and time. For me, I've driven quite a few different cars for 23 years old, and I hope that propels me into any championship I do. You can get caught out a bit by the strategy here. Obviously in IndyCar the strategy is always a bit of a gamble, but with the safety cars that you're expected to have on a street course, there's always some options that get thrown in, and you know, you could be running P15 on a slightly different strategy and suddenly jump up into the top 3. So I think that will throw a bit of things into the mix. Otherwise, if it's a straightforward race, I think we'll get some good overtaking into turn 1. The rest is quite difficult to pass. It's one of those races where fuel saving is quite key. Obviously you do a lot of pre-event kind of data analysis and deciding what goes on. Sometimes you kind of have to wing it through the weekend depending on the tyre degradation and how the conditions are for the fuel, because even a warmer temperature, colder temperature can change your fuel consumption by a lot. So that does play a role. So for example, it'll be really hot today, tomorrow cool down, well, I would say 20 degrees, and that will change a lot how the tyres behave and how the fuel gets burned. So there's a mix in there which will adapt our calculations. Most of the time, there is the most efficient way that gets pre-planned, especially within the strategy, but there's always, you know, the safety cars that get thrown in, and you have to have the plan B, C, D that work around that. So yeah, it's sometimes winging it, sometimes having all the options there. It's a tough world, you know, especially being young. You have to discover sport, discover politics, and discover life at the same time, and there's a lot of challenges within that, which don't make it easy, but obviously those opportunities come when you least expect it. The sports side of things, yeah, just push as much as possible, don't be afraid to make the mistakes and bounce back from it. That's what's, you know, knocked a lot of people down and they haven't recovered from it, so you've just got to keep going.
Closed captioning provided by